Did it, the books, the bit it, the books, the did it, the books, books.
All right. Well, welcome back to I'll Read It Eventually. Today I have one book that I bought, and then something of a curveball for you. And this book is actually a segue into that thing. This is The Razor's Edge by W. Somerset Maugham. Um, I got this for $1 today, but it pointed up something that I had actually seen the other day on YouTube. I saw someone who recorded a video about their physical to be read list, meaning books they already owned they had not read. And I said to myself, I have some of those, as you might imagine. And they had counted how many they had. And I knew that I had a rough count because I use a website called Library Thing, which I guess I'll link in the description below. It's really only for people who are super nerdy about books, but why else would you be watching this video? But I use a library thing, and you can build your own library catalog for your home library, which I've done. But in a fashion very becoming of myself, there are a couple things in there that were mislabeled, and so I wasn't exactly sure how many books I had that I had not read. Because they are supposed to be labeled that way, but some of them, slip through labeled as something else. Um, Input processor is really easy, but if you do it with something mislabeled, then you have to go back and individually relabel all of them. So, bit of a pain. But anyway, um, yesterday I sat down and I went through the catalog and I looked at books that I had marked as being to read, and made sure that they actually were books that I intended to read or had that I was going to read. Um, and then I also went through books that were just marked as being in my library and made sure that the ones I hadn't read were marked as books that I was going to read. And that left me with a fairly substantial number. I knew it was substantial. I didn't realize it was this substantial. I'm just going to show it to you, and then I'm going to give my excuses. And yeah, I have 745 books that I have not yet read in my house at this moment. Now, a couple caveats to that. Number one, I pretty much have always had about 200 that I physically owned that I was going to read, right? In addition to the shelves behind me are the books that I have read and have kept. So, in addition to all of that, right, I have pretty much always had about 200 books. That's just the way that I prefer to do it, is to have them and not have to go searching for them. Um, Weirdly enough, I don't really like using the library, which is kind of terrible to admit, but I don't really like using the library. Um, and so physical books in my house has kind of been the way that I've done it for my whole life. Now, that means that number, or over and above that number, still got like 545 books above that number normally. Here is why. Number one, um, I make a habit of repairing books. So, for instance, this book, it's Apologia Pro Vita Sua by John Henry Cardinal Newman. Um, I got this book for free, and the reason I got it for free is because it was in 6 pieces when I got it. It was falling apart, and I took some glue and I fixed it, glued it back together. So this was not a book; it was the remains of a book. I glued it back together, and brought it home for the price of a couple dots of Elmer's glue. So I have in my home library probably about 60 books like this, where it was not in a state that you could read it at all. and I put it back together. Okay, so that's caveat number one. Those books were free, and I turned them from garbage or destined to be garbage into a book again. Okay, so that's caveat number one. Really number two, because the whole I used to always have had 200 books thing. But that's caveat number one. Number two is that in addition to books which I have repaired and then kept, um, I have in my home library probably about the same number, maybe more. I would say probably it's more like 80 books that I got for free, primarily from two places. One is the school where I work. They did a library clean out 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2 years ago. And I was told to keep things which were relevant for students, and I was told that the rest of it needed to go. And so, vast majority of the things that needed to go, if I thought that it looked at all interesting, was free, right? They were just going to go to half price books anyway, so I kept. And then there's also a shelf at the library at the seminary that I attend, where the books are free. And so, pretty regularly, I walk past that shelf and find myself in possession of a new book. And so, those two caveats, okay? So that's sort of, I've repaired several books, number of books, gotten them for free, and then I've gotten just books for free that were still in good condition. So, that's a pretty substantial portion of that number. Okay. However, even if you were to take the high of those numbers and say, all right, let's put that 60 and that 80 together and then credit myself a few books. Let's say that's 145 books, right? Plus the 200 that I just sort of normally have as normal churn. That means there are still 400 books that I have accrued over my norm or over what I would normally have brought in. Okay. And that's even including like birthdays and Christmas and that sort of thing. Like, it's a substantial number of books. Okay. Don't want anybody to watch this and be like, he didn't take that seriously enough, or wow, that's a lot of books. And I don't really think he had the sense that it was a lot of books. It's a ton of books. It's an enormous number of books. It's more than I thought that I had. By quite a lot, actually. I tell my wife this all the time, that as a bookish person, I just sort of attract them to me. And that book by Newman, is a great example. It's going to go in the garbage. And I turned it from not garbage, or turned it from garbage into not garbage. So that happens. People will give me books. Or, because I'm always on the lookout, I will see, oh, I could get 8 books for $1 or $2, which I did the other day. So that sort of thing just happens. Okay. When you have your eyes open for books, they come to you. Okay. And they're always a bargain. That's the problem. It's always. It's like, oh well, that's a bargain. That's a bargain. Only $2. That's a bargain. The problem is, of course, that if you spend too many dollars on bargains, eventually you end up with hundreds of books that you have not yet read. Right. So all those small caveats, and then two really big ones. Number one, I mentioned seminary. I'm getting a postgraduate degree. Or sorry, a graduate degree. That takes some time. Prior to prior to starting that 6 years ago or 5.5 years ago, I usually read through about 70 physical books a year. That was usually about what I got through. I didn't do a lot of audiobooks back then, and so it's a little bit hard to tell what my average would be, because now I'm big audiobook listener. I count those as having been books that I've read, which is a whole other video. But these days I get through probably more like 40 physical books a year, and then just a huge number of audiobooks every year. Plus books that I have to read for school. So I pretty consistently, I think for the last 5 years, even though I'm in seminary, have been doing somewhere between about 85 and 112. I think that was my high point. 112 books a year. and that's physical and audiobooks. School textbooks that I have to read and books that I read for pleasure, right? So, large number. The problem is that probably more like 60% of those at least are audiobooks, which doesn't help with the number of books I have in my house. So I'm not reading them as fast in the last couple of years. And also in the last couple of years, um, my wife and I have had 2 kids. And so there that produces a slowdown. There are a couple moments where it's like, oh wow, this baby has to nap. I can read, and that happens. But they grow past that to a degree. So huge slowdown in the number of physical books that I've read because of school and children, but uh, not a commensurate slowdown in the number of books that come in. Because again, it's just always a bargain. It's always a bargain. So that's where that number comes from. It's not to excuse it; it's just to explain it. But I recognize, as good as books are, and I mean, I intend the rest of my life to have a large number of books. Right? I'm going to have a library my whole life. I think it's important. I think it's really good. I revisit these books sometimes, and so it's just, yeah, it's always going to be a thing that I have a lot of books. But I don't think that it's necessarily great to have that many books that I have not read physically in my house. It's great that they're here and I can just pick whichever one I want. But I don't think that that's a situation that I ought to have gotten myself into. And I think that now it is a situation I need to get myself out of. However, I can't just get rid of them all because, of course, I bought them because I want to read them, right? Um, and so that is what needs to be done, which sounds stupid saying it out loud, but of course, that's what needs to happen. So, I am setting a challenge for myself. This is sort of a pilot program of this. We'll see how it goes and make changes accordingly. But for the next 6 months, give or take a couple weeks, because it's the middle of June right now. So between now and January 1st, 2027, I am doing something called Shop the Shelf. Shop the Shelf, which is a challenge, again, that I'm setting for myself, which is exactly what it sounds like. The only place that I can buy books is at home from my own bookcases. So, 2 rules, very simple. Number 1, no buying books. It's okay if somebody gifts me a book. Obviously, not going to be weird and be like, oh, I can't accept that now. People can gift me a book. And books which are free are still okay. Particularly if they're like Apologia, Vita, where it was already garbage. If I can fix a book, I'm not going to throw it in the garbage. And if it's a book that I want and I fix it, yeah, I'm going to keep it. That's just a reality. So, the only sort of caveat to the gifts portion of that would be that I'm going to try not to actually put any books on my gift list, which might be a little difficult. I might actually kind of find myself in the end forced to put a couple on there because that's what people tend to get me for birthday and Christmas and that sort of thing. And if there aren't any on there, people might struggle to figure out what to get me. So, almost as like a social convention, I might have to ask for some books. But as a general rule, not gonna do that. I'm not gonna try to do that. So that's rule number 1. No buying. Free or gifts, that's fine. But no buying books. So that's the last one you're gonna see for a while. On that note, by the way, there are a couple videos that will, I think, have come out after this, where I'll be showing books that I bought. And it's because I'd already bought those books, and there's a video showing like, oh, hey, I bought this. So I might throw a edit in there at the beginning that says, hey, remember, this was recorded earlier than my Shop the Shelf challenge video. But it doesn't matter. Just know that. Or maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, rule number 2. Um, People in the modern world are often subject to something that I think you could probably call like choice fatigue. Maybe that's a good way of putting it. Um, Essentially, you're presented with so many choices, and this happens a lot on like streaming services. You're presented with so many choices that rather than making it easy to choose, it actually makes it more difficult to choose. Um, you get too many options, and it is good for the human mind if you narrow it down. Um, and that's like actual psychological research, not just like me saying that. It has been demonstrated that human beings do better with somewhere between about 5 and 9 choices, right? Any more than that, and you struggle, right? And so what I'm going to do when I finish the book that I'm currently reading, Middlemarch by George Eliot, which has gotten better, by the way, um, better than it was the last time I mentioned. When I finish that book, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some sort of randomizer on the internet, and I'm going to roll a 5-sided die. 5 because I have 5 bookcases. Uh, I have one behind me, 2, 3, 4 down the hallway, and 5 in the living room. And those bookcases, that will give me a number. They're numbered that way: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'll roll another one, which will be 6-sided, which will tell me what shelf on those bookcases. Now, not all the bookcases have 6 shelves, but that's the highest number that any of them has is 6. And so if it's 6, if the shelf only has 4, or the case only has 4 shelves, well, 4, 5, and 6 are all just shelf number 4, right? And that will give me, depending on the bookcase, about 20 books to choose from, which is fine. That's normally what I do. And then I have to pick from those. What that means, though, is if I hit the same shelf twice and I'm like, yeah, I just don't really want to read this stuff, high probability that those books are not going to stay here much longer. Because if I'm looking at them, I'm like, man, I just don't want to read this. Well, that tells me probably shouldn't have bought it in the first place. So, going to be a little ruthless with that. I normally am pretty ruthless with that sort of thing. This is a good time to talk about this. Normally, what I do when I'm trying to choose what book to read next is I will sort of walk around my home library and I'll grab a couple books that I think look interesting or that sort of catch my eye or something, new that I was like, oh yeah, I really wanted to check that one out. And I will read the first 10 to 15 pages of all of them. So like 4 books, I'll read the first 10 to 15 pages. And normally, if I think it's really good, I might just not even open the other ones, right? If I'm reading book number 1, it's like, wow, this is super interesting. I'll just read this one, right? It doesn't even matter how good those are. This is great. Just stick with it. But if I do, sort of read the first one, like, I think this is probably one, but let's check these other ones. If I start reading a book and I get 10, 15 pages in and I'm just sort of like, yeah, no, this is not for me. I try to be really ruthless because I knew, again, before I counted, I knew that I had a lot of books. And I need to be ruthless, right? Um, Now that's almost doubled, right? And so I will be doing that same thing, right? I'll be looking at the shelf. I'll pull a couple off the shelf. I'll read a couple pages. And if it's not immediately apparent that, like, yeah, this is a good, well-written book that I'm actually going to be interested in, a week from now when I finish this other one, then it's going to go the way of the dodo because I've said it before. I am genuinely trying to draw down the number of books in my house. It's something that needs to happen. Right? They don't need to all disappear. I'm not trying to get rid of all my books, but I have a lot, and it is certainly a worthwhile endeavor to have less, to have the good ones, but to have less. So that's going to be my goal going forward between now and January 1st. In January, I'll sort of revisit this and see, number one, how did I do? Did I actually refrain from buying books? Which I think will be okay. But we'll see. Did I refrain from buying books? And then how many did I get rid of? Right? How many did I go through? And if it's working, then we'll just stick with it. We'll just keep going. Um, I think no matter what happens, ultimately in January, the thing that will definitely happen is that I will be setting some very specific parameters for myself about book buying. Because I think that's where the problem has come in, right? As I said, the number of books that I'm reading on a regular basis has gone down just due to circumstance. But my buying habits have not actually changed all that much from 5 or 6 years ago. Uh, and so I'm hoping that with seminary very soon coming to an end, obviously my kids are still going to be around, but seminary very soon coming to an end, a lot of that time that was going toward that will then be available for reading if I want to use it that way. And hopefully the number of books I have will just sort of naturally start to atrophy back down to a realistic level instead of the level it's at. Uh, so we'll see. There's a whole that bookshelf number 5 in the other room. I'd really like to see that bookshelf stop being a bookshelf, just to start with. So maybe that is going to be my goal for January, is just to see if I can't get that shelf in there mostly or entirely drawn down to not being a bookshelf at all, and see if we can make that my new equilibrium while we work on the next stage. So this is going to be a long project. Like I said, I'm not just going to box them all up and get rid of them. But it certainly is worth making changes for. So, yeah, that's my new quest to shop on my shelves. So, I'll give regular updates about that. I'll say what my current physical to be read number is each time I make a video. Have to figure out where to put that exactly, but I'll make sure to mention that each time. And yeah, instead of telling you what I have thrifted, maybe I'll tell you what I am sending out the door. If I don't actually read the whole thing and make a video about it. So, yeah, there you go. There's a nice little update of coming attractions. Speaking of that, so I am reading Middlemarch. I also started reading this week Hannah Coulter by Wendell Berry, which I mentioned a couple weeks ago now. Man, is it sad. Wow. 50 pages in. Really sad. Holy smokes. And I don't think it's going to get less sad. I think it's going to get more sad. So, but incredibly good. It's the kind of book that I think anybody could pick up and read and just really love. Barry, his word choice is so good, and it's just, I think I described another book like this not too long ago. It's just this beautiful thing that washes over you, right? Um, and Hannah Coulter is that way. Yeah, it just washes over you. It's not hard. It doesn't try your mind, um, but it's like deeply meaningful stuff. So, really enjoying that. You'll be seeing a video about that sometime not too long from now. Um, well, probably July, sometime in July, because that's when I'll finish reading it. Because I am again reading it for a book club, and our last meeting is in July. So that's when I'll be making a video about that. and that'll be one off my physical to be read list, which would be great. So, um, yeah. So there you go. That's where we are, where we're going, and yeah. Hope you will enjoy following along. So that's all for now. Go read something.